Eugene of Savoy was born into a noble French family in Paris, France in 1663. Initially prepared for a life in the church, and because of a family scandal, he left France at the age of 19 for Austria, determined for a career in the military. His exploits as an Austrian general allowed him to be considered as one of the greatest military commanders of early modern Europe. He swore loyalty to the Hapsburg monarchy, and over 6 decades, he proved himself as both a model soldier and skilled diplomat. He was the teacher of the Prussian king Frederick the Great, and Napoleon considered him one of the 7 greatest strategists of all time, worthy of study by future generations. It all started for 19-year-old Eugene at the decisive Battle of Vienna in September 1683 against the invading Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans were soundly defeated by a coalition relief force led by Polish King Jan Sobieski. Eugene so distinguished himself in the battle that Emperor Leopold I gave him a regiment of dragoons to command the following year. The Great Turkish War began, that would last until 1699. To counter the continued Ottoman threat against Europe, Pope Innocent XI formed the Holy League in 1684. The alliance included the Holy Roman Empire, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and the Republic of Venice, with Russia joining 2 years later. On the Holy League campaign against the Ottomans, Eugene continued to distinguish himself as a commander and soldier. By the end of 1685, he was made the rank of Major General at the age of only 22. He led his dragoons in the offensive to liberate Buda in Hungary from June to September 1686 that ended 140 years of Ottoman occupation. He then played a major role in the Battle of Mohács in August 1687, where large territories of Hungary were also cleared of Ottoman rule. Starting in July 1688, he took part in the Siege of Belgrade, which was considered one of the most formidable Ottoman strongholds in Europe at the time. On September 6th, Eugene helped rally the troops assaulting the city walls, and Belgrade was taken after over a month-long siege. By age 29, he was named Field Marshal, the highest rank in the imperial service. The greatest achievement for Prince Eugene in the Great Turkish War was his first independent command of Holy League forces at the Battle of Zenta in 1697. Eugene was a master at quick movements, assessing a situation and turning it into his advantage. On September 11, 1697, he came upon the massive Ottoman army that was in the process of crossing the river Tisa. Eugene's forces then ambushed them, attacking from all sides, including launching an artillery bombardment on the masses of increasingly trapped Ottoman troops. In the end, up to 30,000 Ottomans lay dead, compared to only around 430 for the Holy League. The battle was a crushing defeat for the Ottomans, losing an additional 87 cannons, the royal treasure chest, and the state seal of the Ottoman Empire. The overwhelming victory was the decisive step that led to the Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699, which ended Ottoman control over large parts of Eastern Europe. The victory at Zenta further cemented Eugene of Savoy's reputation as a brilliant commander, and Emperor Leopold I greatly awarded him with honors and estates, making him one of the richest men in Europe. Eugene's fondness for cavalry in scouting enemy positions, and their fighting in both mounted and dismounted roles, would influence the Hapsburg armed forces for centuries. He also took great care to establish forward supply bases to keep his troops well fed and well equipped, proving his battlefield victories were as much about logistics as tactics on the field. Eugene would play a decisive role in his next campaign, participating in the War of the Spanish Succession starting in 1701, winning numerous battles that would prove decisive in the annals of European history. The war was a conflict between the Austrians and the French for the Spanish throne, when the Hapsburg monarch Charles II died without an heir. To counter the growing dominance of French monarch Louis XIV in Europe, Leopold I challenged the French for the Spanish throne. Fighting for Leopold I, Eugene of Savoy crossed the Alps into Spanish territory in northern Italy and won 2 successive battles against French-led forces in July and September 1701. These victories convinced other allies to join Austria's cause. The English, the Dutch, and their allies in the Holy Roman Empire formally joined a grand alliance with Austria in September 1701 against the French. After indecisive battles in 1702, Eugene of Savoy and his great friend the English Duke of Marlborough won a great victory over the French Bavarian army at Blenheim in August 1704. The French alliance lost over 27,000 casualties, while the Grand Alliance lost less than half of that. The victory secured Bavaria against the French, who were attempting to knock Leopold I out of the war by seizing the Austrian capital of Vienna. At the Siege of Turin in Italy in 1706, Eugene led a relief force against the besieging French army and decisively defeated them, causing almost 30,000 casualties, while losing just over 8,000 men in comparison. Northern Italy was secured by Eugene as the French began to withdraw its forces after the defeat. Important victories for the control of the Spanish Netherlands took place in 1708 through 1709. Together again, Prince Eugene of Savoy and the Duke of Marlborough won battles at Oudenarde in July 1708, the Siege of Lille that ended in December 1708, and finally at the Battle of Malplaquet, despite massive Allied casualties in September 1709. With Leopold I gone, and after the death of Holy Roman Emperor Joseph I in 1711, the political landscape in Europe changed, and the Grand Alliance fell apart after the succession of Charles VI. Eugene fought a hopeless war for 2 more years until the Treaty of Utrecht was signed in 1713, with the Treaty of Rastatt the next year, finally partitioning the former Spanish Empire. The Austrian Hapsburgs held on to all of its German territory, and from the treaty, they gained the Spanish Netherlands, northern Italy, the Kingdom of Naples, and Sardinia, all being ceded by the Spanish. However, they were unable to gain the crown of Spain. Eugene of Savoy's final great victories of his career came again against the Ottoman Empire during the Austro-Turkish War of 1716 to 1718. Once again, the Ottomans gathered a massive army of 150,000 men to invade Hapsburg territory, and Eugene met them at the Petrovaradin fortress at the military frontier of the Hapsburg monarchy. Eugene had a force of over 80,000 men, including 8,000 Serbs garrisoned at the fortress. On the morning of August 5, 1716, Eugene started an offensive against the Ottomans that were attacking the fortress. When the Habsburg troops in the center ran into trouble, the Ottomans attempted a counterattack, but failed when they quickly became encircled when Eugene flanked them with his cavalry. The Ottomans couldn't break the encirclement and had no choice but to attempt to flee. However, Eugene completely routed them, killing around 30,000, wounding thousands more, while losing only 3,000 men with another 2,000 wounded. The Ottoman force retreated back to their fortress in Belgrade, where Eugene would meet them for the final major conflict of the war in 1717. The Siege of Belgrade in 1717 was Eugene's most famous victory, for it wasn't just his strategic ability on the field of battle that made him a great commander, it was also his energy and enthusiasm that inspired his men, oftentimes at great odds. The Ottomans had retaken Belgrade in 1690, and Eugene set off to conquer the city in May 1717 with a large army. However, by late July, he soon found himself caught between a huge Ottoman relief army and the fortress he was besieging. In order to take the city, his forces were deployed in a dangerous and daring position because of the location of the rivers surrounding the fortress. His army was dug in and being ravaged by disease, and Eugene knew his forces were on the brink of collapse. He was advised numerous times to lift the siege and escape back to Hapsburg territory. By some accounts, the Ottomans now outnumbered him more than 2 or 3 to 1, but Eugene refused to flee. He told his men, "Either I will take Belgrade, or the Turks will take me." During the night of August 15th, he visited his officers and soldiers, offering words of hope. He personally handed out wine, brandy, and beer to boost the men's courage. His men had supreme confidence in their leader. At midnight on August 16th, in the thick fog and darkness, Eugene launched a surprise attack on the Ottoman relief army. The attack caught the Ottomans completely off guard, and they attempted to mount a defense against the infantry and cavalry charge by Eugene's forces. Up until daybreak, confusion and chaos reigned as the two forces battled each other in the darkness. By 8 a.m., when the fog lifted, the Ottomans attempted a massive counterattack, but Eugene rallied his men and pushed them back. A final reserve cavalry charge by the Imperial Habsburg forces, personally led by Eugene, sent the Ottomans into complete disarray and retreat. By 10 a.m., the battle was won, and Eugene's army inflicted over 20,000 casualties on the Ottomans. The Imperial forces suffered around 5,000 battlefield casualties, with many thousands more stricken and dead from disease. Eugene had captured the entire Turkish encampment, complete with most of its ammunition, artillery, and equipment. The fortress at Belgrade surrendered soon afterwards, and Eugene took the city. The victory confirmed Eugene of Savoy as Europe's leading general, with his ability to win against all odds. Although the Ottomans retook Belgrade over 20 years later, they would no longer be a threat to Central Europe. After the war had officially ended in 1718, a long peace ensued, and Eugene turned more to his estates, with his books and gardens, collection of exotic animals, paintings, and buildings. Eugene, with his mental and physical abilities weakened at age 70, took part in one last conflict that took place from 1733 to 1735 in the War of Polish Succession. He was forced to take cautious and defensive actions throughout the conflict, and never regained any of his former battlefield glory. He died in his sleep in 1736 at the age of 72. He is remembered as Austria's greatest general and helped lay the foundation for Hapsburg power in Central Europe.